Trying to keep up with a population explosion and keep the traffic flowing. Ahead on Face the State, COTA has a multi-billion-dollar plan to expand public transit in Central Ohio, the Link Us initiative. It's asking you to help foot the bill by raising the local sales tax. We'll explain what's on your ballot and what the money would pay for. Also, tracking the money in the most expensive U.S. Senate race in United States history. Hundreds of millions of dollars being spent in the race between Senator Sherrod Brown and his challenger, Bernie Moreno. We're looking into who is behind all that money. Plus, phones down. It's now been a year since troopers started giving tickets to drivers caught using their phones while behind the wheel. They've given tens of thousands of tickets, but the new distracted driving law appears to be cutting down on crashes and saving lives. Thanks for joining us for Face the State. I'm Doug Petcash. The population of Central Ohio is growing fast. In fact, planning experts predict the area could grow by as many as 1 million people by 2050. But how will all those people get around without gridlock on our roads and highways? Leaders say we're behind on transportation, but a levy on November's ballot could help Central Ohio catch up. The Central Ohio Transit Authority, COTA, is asking voters in 5 Central Ohio counties to approve a levy that would increase the local sales tax by a half penny. COTA says it would bring in $8 billion over 25 to 30 years and allow it to increase services by 45%. The Transit Authority would use the money for its Link Us initiative to improve public transit. The new services would include 5 bus rapid transit systems connecting the city with outlying towns, plus 150 miles of sidewalks, trails, and bikeways that are connected to the transit. Now, this is the ballot issue voters in Delaware, Fairfield, Franklin, Licking, and Union counties will see on their ballots. If you voted early, of course, you already made your choice. It explains that the levy will increase the local sales tax to pay for construction of roads, bridges, greenways, sidewalks, pathways, bikeways, or pedestrian underpasses and overpasses. It needs a simple majority of voters to say yes for it to pass. Joining me now to talk about the Link Us initiative and how it could transform public transit in Central Ohio is COTA President and CEO Monica Tellez-Fowler. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Glad to have you. First of all, why is this transformation needed?
Yeah, I think there's multiple things, but for the big piece is the growth that we expect in this region. So when we go around and we really try to educate people about what Link Us is, it is not about just transportation. It's really a growth strategy for our region, and it covers multiple different pieces of it.
Well, let's talk about that. What is the plan? What will you do with the money that comes in if voters approve this?
Yeah, there's lots of different pieces to this. One of them being public transit. Right now, our public transit doesn't necessarily serve the needs that we have today. And so really it's about building out that system to what we should have, what a region our size should have. But really it's also about managing the growth, right? So it would mean 45% more service for COTA, and that includes at least 5 rapid transit corridors. 3 of those have already been identified. They're bus rapid transit. Additionally, we would be improving 14 lines or creating new lines. And it's really about moving people across the region in a more efficient way, faster and reliably, as well as really building out our COTA Plus service, which is a microtransit service. We would also be looking at extended service hours, because right now our service ends at 11:30, and that doesn't serve a large portion of our population's purposes, right? We have third shift workers in our region that have no access to public transit because we don't serve during those hours. So really it's about building out that service. But additionally, there's other things, right? So we have talked about the transit supportive infrastructure, and what that is it's really 500 miles of additional new sidewalks, trails.
500 miles.
500 miles, yes. And protected bike paths, right? And so when we talk about transportation, it's a system. And there's this Link Us is really about creating multiple options that will allow people to move throughout our region in that safe, connected way without like having just the one option. Because right now, our system is largely built around a single occupancy vehicles, and that doesn't serve everyone's purpose, and it certainly doesn't provide us with the ability to manage the congestion that we expect.
So is it kind of looking at it like if Columbus was the hub, you're going to have these spokes that go out, and really connect with this bus rapid transit?
So obviously the old spokes and hub system, that's an old transportation system. We're really looking at more crosstown things. So you'll see right now we do have multiple lines going through Columbus that will be a connection point always. But when I say the additional 14 lines, we're talking about crosstown lines. Some of the lines that are being explored for the future is the Northeast corridor that would connect the airport, Intel possibly, in the south to Rickenbacker. We're looking at a northwest connection that would essentially go from Hilliard, Dublin to Intel, really connecting job centers up there. So we're looking at different options.
How many people ride COTA buses a year now?
Right now, last year at 2023, we had 11.2 million riders throughout the year. But our ridership continues to grow. Over the last 5 service changes that COTA has implemented, we've been implementing increases with each service change, which has added riders every time we make the service change. So last month, in September, was our highest ridership since March of 2020. So pre-pandemic numbers compared to, we're finally starting to see those numbers come back.
So we have some renderings of what the bus rapid transit system would look like. So what makes it different than what the current service is for COTA riders?
Yeah, there's lots of things, and it's really meant to speed it up. But the primary thing is really dedicated guideway. So the buses would have their dedicated lane in a large portion of the corridor. Not all of it, but a lot of it. And what that does is allow us to speed up. There's other things as well, transit signal priority, which work very similar to something like an emergency vehicle that allows us to have access to a green light longer than any other vehicles. It works a lot like light rail. So when you think about boarding and deboarding, it's flat. So level boarding is what we call that.
Platform.
Yeah, it's along the lines with the platform. So this becomes especially important when you talk about wheels getting on and off the vehicles. Whether that's a wheelchair, a stroller, a walker, whatever the case is, if you have to wait for a ramp to deploy and lift up again to get those wheels on and off, it takes up some time. So that level boarding speeds things up. And then all of the fare collection will happen off board as well. So you think about another way you may get stuck waiting to get on the bus is when somebody's trying to put a wrinkled dollar into that fare box. It takes time. All of that will occur off board now so that people can get on and off quickly and allow the buses to move faster.
So asking for a sales tax increase is a big ask. A lot of people look at their pocketbooks. Sure. Why should people in Central Ohio support the Link Us initiative and this levy?
Yeah, well, so for me, one, it's a sales tax. It's not a property tax. I recognize that people have had a lot of taxes around here, and that doesn't, that's really kind of the lever we have to pull as a transit agency within Ohio. But I would say that the large piece is whether or not you use COTA, that there's going to be benefits from this initiative for everyone in our region.
How so?
Yeah, because, I kind of mentioned the 500 miles of sidewalks, bikeways, trails. So somehow or another, you're going to be utilizing those services there. But even if none of that applies to you, if you use your car and that's the way you're going to get back and forth, if we need to manage that congestion so that you don't sit in more traffic, this is going to help that. So it matters to everyone. So there really is something in this initiative for everyone in our region.
It's 5 counties, as I mentioned. Franklin County, obviously, with Columbus being here in the center of it all,
yes,
is obvious kind of why you'd be asking for voters here to support it. But how about the other 4 counties? What benefits them for supporting this measure?
Yeah, well, and I want to make sure that I'm very specific. It's only those areas where where COTA provides service. So while it goes into those counties, it's very specific areas within those counties. So it's not the entire county that they'll see on their ballot. But why? It's because they already have connection to the COTA service. We're already providing service in there. And so they will continue to see that benefit. So whether that means increased frequency, increased service hours, or just when they do connect to the COTA service, they're going to see an improvement when they're making those connections.
All right, so what happens if this measure doesn't pass?
You know, for me, that's just not an option. We have been underfunding transit in our region for decades. We are only asking to move to the 1%. That's really comparable to something like Cuyahoga or Hamilton County. That's Cleveland and Cincinnati.
You mean the 1%, your share of that sales tax?
Yes. So that would really put us in line there. But I would say, you know, we don't have the option for that. One, we know the population is coming. I think that if you point and look to other cities who waited to do that, they are now trying to manage their way out of congestion, and it's just very hard to catch up afterwards. We know that the growth is coming. We can start managing it now, so that by the time we get there, we have a system in place. And as I said, a system with multiple options that can really handle the population growth and the congestion we expect. But additionally, I would just say that, you know, the fact that we don't have the system that we need even for today. We have multiple initiatives, whether that be Vision Zero, whether that be, you know, housing needs that we have. This initiative helps and is kind of a backbone to all of those different things. And so it's imperative for us to start to put the foundational pieces in place. And LinkUs is that foundational piece.
And people can find more information on, I think it's linkuscolumbus.com.
That's right.
Right? So
yes.
You can get more information there. And of course, we have a lot of reporting on it on 10tv.com as well. Monica Tejas-Fowler, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time. Well, coming up next on Face the State, we're tracking the money in the super expensive U.S. Senate race in Ohio. Hundreds of millions of outside money is pouring into both campaigns. Where's it coming from? And later, statue status. The city of Columbus took down its Christopher Columbus statue 4 years ago. While it sits in storage, the city is making progress on the project to figure out how to display it in the future. In just over 2 weeks, we'll know if Democratic incumbent Senator Sherrod Brown will serve a 4th term in the U.S. Senate representing Ohio, or if we'll have a new senator in Republican Bernie Moreno. It's a hotly contested race with implications for which party will hold the majority in the Senate. The importance of it is reflected in the ad spending for the race. It's now more than $400 million. That includes money spent during the primary. This is the most expensive Senate race in the country so far. That's according to data from Ad Impact, which tracks campaign spending on advertising. For just the November election, data shows Republicans have outspent Democrats by nearly $29 million for the race between Senator Brown and Bernie Moreno. Both parties have an additional $68 million in ad spots reserved between now and Election Day. It's the most expensive U.S. Senate battle in United States history. 10 TV reporter Kevin Landers explains who's behind all that money.
I'm sure Brown and I approve this message.
Incumbent Democrat Sherrod Brown
Buckle up, Ohio. We're just getting started.
and challenger Republican Bernie Moreno are each armed with bags of cash.
Special interests supporting Bernie Moreno are spending more than $100 million in negative ads against me.
Brown has raised $51 million, far outpacing Moreno's $15 million war chest. Ian Vanderwalker studies elections for the Brennan Center for Justice.
It is not true that whoever spends the most wins.
Hundreds of millions of dollars of outside money is pouring into both campaigns. Sarah Briner is research director at Open Secrets, which tracks campaign spending.
Moreno particularly has benefited hugely from outside spending. I think so far this cycle, we have around $45 million spent supporting him, and then an additional $33 million opposing Brown. So that's way more than Brown is getting.
Top contributors for each candidate breaks down this way, according to the website Open Secrets. For Brown, it's these 5 groups. For Moreno, he's relying on these 5 industries. But that's money that can be tracked.
There is money that is impossible to trace.
It's called dark money, mostly untraceable cash, and it's playing a big role in this campaign.
The opacity is there on purpose to mislead, to obfuscate the true source of money, and to reduce the accountability that these groups have to the public.
Moreno's top contributors are from political action committees. Defend American Jobs, a super PAC affiliated with the cryptocurrency industry, donated more than $30 million, according to the Washington Post.
That is definitely an industry to watch in terms of trying to build influence in Washington.
The Senate Leadership Fund, another PAC affiliated with Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell of Kentucky, has spent more than $20 million on the race, according to Open Secrets. The Win Senate PAC, a pro-Democrat fund, has spent nearly $20 million on advertising attacking Moreno on behalf of Brown, according to Open Secrets.
Your Senate vote will dictate our future.
Because the race is so close, voters will continue to be inundated with political ads. But it's who's behind the ads that experts say voters should pay close attention to.
I think it's important to keep an eye on who are these big industries, who are these ideological spenders.
And joining me now is 10 TV's Kevin Landers. Kevin, why is this race so expensive?
Well, basically, Doug, I think there are 3 basic reasons why this is so expensive. Number one, if you read the polls, and most of them are lining up the same way, this is an extremely close race. I just checked this morning, about +1 on either side. So that's number one. Number two is there's a lot at stake in this race. The winner obviously will control probably the power in the U.S. Senate. Right now, Democrats have a razor-thin majority. And the third is neither candidate has debated one another. So they're using these political ads to sway voters. And that's some of the reasons why this is so expensive.
That's the way they're getting a message out, either for or against the other guy. So you also mentioned dark money in your report. What is dark money, and then why is it so hard to track?
Well, it's a bit confusing, but dark money essentially is money that is coming from 5013Cs, for example. They're nonprofits. By law, they're not required to disclose who their donors are. Now, a lot of that money goes into super PACs, and this is where it gets a little confusing. Super PACs must disclose who their donors are unless it comes from a 5013C, for example, and those donors do not have to be disclosed. So that's kind of how the dark money works, and there is a lot of money coming in from that sector into this specific race.
The candidates have been known also to do, help self-fund and give a boost to their own campaigns. Right. Bernie Moreno does some of that. How much of his campaign funding is actually self-funded by himself?
Well, according to records from the FEC, Bernie Moreno has loaned himself $4.5 million. He's raised $15 million. So that's what we know about his. And then Brown, obviously the incumbent, has a lot more donors there. And so he's, I think, totally raised, about $51 million. So that doesn't even include the outside money that both sides are getting as well. So as you can see, bags of money on either side.
Yeah, and we have 2 weeks to go, and as we reported, about $68 million in ads have already been reserved for that lead up to November 5th. So we're going to keep seeing those ads repetitively, of course, over the next 2 weeks.
Not just on TV, but on social media as well.
And on the radio and everywhere else.
Right.
Yeah, and Kevin, thank you for that really interesting report on where the money's coming from and how it's being spent. Thank you. Still ahead on Face the State, the distracted driving law 1 year later, what troopers are seeing on Ohio's highways in the 12 months since police started writing tickets. Law enforcement in Ohio has been writing tickets for distracted driving offenses for a year now. This month is the first anniversary of the state's new distracted driving law. The State Highway Patrol released numbers that show more drivers are keeping their hands on the wheel and not on their phones. There's a notable drop in distracted driving crashes and deaths on our roads. While the news is encouraging, the state says there's still more work to do.
The big takeaway is that the new law is effective.
Ohio State Highway Patrol Lieutenant Ray Santiago is talking about the stats that show fewer crashes and deaths since law enforcement started giving tickets last October under Ohio's new distracted driving law. Over the last year, there were about 1,100 fewer distracted driving crashes than the 12 months before police started enforcing the new law. OSHP says fatal distracted driving crashes fell more than 19% from 31 to 25. Troopers also issued more than 25,000 citations for distracted driving, an average of 69 per day.
We see that motorists are taking it to heart, and they're starting to make those changes, whether it's forced or not.
When motorists are dropping their distractions, that means that Ohio roadways are safer. And that means a lot to ODOT crews, but it also means a lot to roadside workers everywhere.
The fine for a first distracted driving offense is $150 and 2 points on your license. Fines are doubled in work zones.
And that's an expensive lesson to learn, but we'd much rather go about it in that route than the latter and having to let someone know that a loved one isn't coming home because of a poor decision.
But first-time offenders can get a second chance. 15,000 of them so far have taken the state's online distracted driving safety course, which makes them eligible for reduced fines and penalties.
It's not always about collecting fines and punishing drivers for bad behavior, but it's a good opportunity to learn about why they should not be using their phones and driving.
While year one has been encouraging, Santiago says the momentum needs to carry over into year 2 and beyond.
Until we get that number as low as we possibly can to 0, we know that collectively we have some work to do.
Over the last year, Franklin County was third in the state with more than 600 distracted driving crashes, behind only Cuyahoga and Hamilton counties. Finally this morning, this past week, we marked Columbus Day, also known as Indigenous Peoples Day. The city of Columbus officially renamed the holiday in 2020. The same year, it removed a statue of Christopher Columbus, one that stood outside City Hall for 65 years. Since then, the statue has been in storage in a secret location. Now, the city is moving into the next phase of the project to figure out what to do with the statue. Here's an update on reimagining Columbus. On July 1st of 2020, a crane lifted the statue from its pedestal. At the time, Mayor Andrew Ginther said it didn't reflect the city's values. City of Columbus Special Cultural Projects Coordinator Aaron Blue says the city recently wrapped up gathering public input for the Reimagining Columbus project.
We're currently synthesizing all of the feedback that we got to share with the design team, which will be the activities for the second year of the project.
With a $2 million grant from the Mellon Foundation, the city is working on a design for a display to explain Columbus's legacy for this day and age. The 2-year project includes the public feedback, plus a team of historians, consultants on diversity and inclusion, and an indigenous architecture firm.
We are really doing the work to engage with our community members, to lift voices that are not always a part of the conversation, and to see what kind of spaces, commemorative spaces we can have in the 21st century that feel inclusive to all of our residents.
Londa Mazdea Brunetto says the statue is important to the Italian community here.
It was a gift from Genoa, Italy to America, to Columbus especially, where so many individuals that were Italian descent came here and could raise families and be recognized.
Her father and grandfather crafted special washers and a bolt to replace missing ones on the statue just in time for its dedication in 1955. She believes the whole story of Columbus's impact should be told, but told correctly.
I knew that Christopher was going to get some slack, but I also believed that the Christopher Columbus statue would actually have a presence for the Italians and people would see our point of view.
Blue says the goal for the next year is to come up with 3 design concepts to take back to the people.
As the largest city in the nation, maybe the world, named after Columbus, we felt that this project and this opportunity from the Mellon Foundation was to really dig a little deeper into the legacy of Christopher Columbus.
The Christopher Columbus statue will stay in storage until a final decision is made on the design and construction begins on the new public display. Thank you for joining me this week for Face the State. I'm Doug Petcash. I'll see you next Sunday at 11:30.